Harriet was known to be literate, an enslaved woman in the region, the only one known to be able to read and write. Her father was a free man, and because she could read and write, maybe her world was larger than the other dark-skinned people that looked like her that lived under the institution and shackles of slavery. What did this woman and her mother say to Frederick at that time? What did she say, and what did she sing? Let's use our imagination and think about that. Hold on, keep your eyes on the prize, hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Mary had 3 links of chain, every link was my Jesus' name. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. When my way gets dark at night, I know the Lord will keep me light. Keep your hands on the plow, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Went in the battle, didn't go to stay. My soul got happy and I stayed all day. Keep your hands on the plow, hold on. Talk about me as much as you please. The more you talk, I'll be on my knees. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. When I get to heaven, gonna sing and shout, ain't nobody there to put me out. Keep your hands on the plow, hold on. Went in the battle, didn't go to stay. My soul got happy and I stayed all day. Keep your hands on the plow, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Hold on, yeah, hold on. Can you see yourself holding on? Hold on, keep your hand on it, keep your hand on it, keep your eye on the prize, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Hold on, keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, let's hear it again for Paula Elliott to get us going. So I want to welcome everybody today on behalf of Community Change, Mass Humanities, and the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute for Race and Justice. This is the 10th year we've done this reading out here, and it's really a pleasure. I need to kind of look at my list of all the other co-sponsors we have and give them a shout. We have Jewish Voices for Peace, Boston, the Bostonian Society, the William Monroe Trotter Institute, Royal House and Slave Quarters, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, Mass Association of Human Rights Commissions, the YWCA Cambridge, the Museum of African American History, Boston and Nantucket, the Medford Human Rights Commission, the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, the Boston African American Historic Site, the New Democracy Coalition, Community Conversations, Sister to Sister, the Robbins House, and Union Capital, Boston. So as I said, this is our 10th year doing this reading, and when we began with optimism and thought of reading Frederick Douglass in the era of Barack Obama. We've had many ebbs and flows in the intervening years, perhaps having hit a low point at this point, but that's why we gather here. And over the last couple of years, we have been given pause to think more clearly about what Douglass has to say and what he articulated about systems of oppression and injustice that infect our society. But there is room for optimism as we gather to reaffirm our commitment and determination to combat injustice wherever we see it and find it in all its forms in society. In the past few years, I've thought often and reflected on the words of Langston Hughes. Oh yes, I say it plain, America was never America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. It's led me to think of myself as an aspirational American who sees America typically celebrated as 4th of July, just as Hughes described it. The dream the dreamers dreamed. And this year, the dreamers are especially in our minds. This year, one of my dreams is actually coming true, as we have a group of Houston interns who are going to film the events today for the first time, and we will post that online after it's done. So on behalf, so let me see all the interns raise their hands, all our and fellows. So it doesn't end with the applause, because they're going to come around and try to talk to you about what this day means to you and what you think of Douglass's speech. And I will say that I'll remind you what this banner says, and the idea is that we read this speech together, and in so doing, we collectively affirm our place in this society. So following the speech, my colleague Emily Pinarola will also describe a project that we have going on related to bail. And Rose has a special announcement from Mass Humanities. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Now we're going to begin the lineup. So please begin to situate yourself. Each person, you will notice that the speech has 53 parts. Each person will take one paragraph. So the lineup begins with the Speaker of the House. And so position yourself behind him. Yes? Please don't be shy. Please don't be shy. This year, in honor of Frederick Douglass's bicentennial, we have for you a copy of Frederick Douglass's Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave. They are free. We have boxes of them here, and we do not want to take them home. Each reader will get a copy, but it doesn't mean that you won't be able to get a copy if you don't read. We're just making them available. So please, before you leave, get a copy of Frederick Douglass's narrative. Thank you so much. Let's begin with Speaker.
The meaning of the 4th of July for the Negro. Frederick Douglass, July 5th, 1852. Mr. President, friends, and fellow citizens, the task before me is one which requires much previous thought and study for its proper performance. I do not remember ever to have appeared as a speaker before any assembly more shrinkingly, nor with greater distrust of my ability than I do this day. The papers and placards say that I am to deliver a 4th of July oration. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, the distance between this platform and the slave plantation from which I escaped is considerable, and the difficulties to be overcome in getting from the latter to the former are by no means slight. That I am here to today is, to me, a matter of astonishment as well as of gratitude.
This, for the purpose of this celebration, is the 4th of July. It is the birthday of your national independence and of your political freedom. This, to you, is what the Passover was to the emancipated people of God. It carries your minds back to the day and to the act of your great deliverance. This celebration also marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that the Republic of America is now 76 years old. I am glad, fellow citizens, that your nation is so young. You are, even now, only in the beginning of your national career, still lingering in the period of childhood. I repeat, I am glad this is so. There is hope in the thought, and hope is much needed under the dark clouds which lower above the horizon.
Fellow citizens, 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. The style and title of your sovereign people, in which you now glory, have not been born. You were under this British crown. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government. England, as the fatherland, although a considerable distance from your home, imposed, in the exercise of its parental prerogatives, upon its colonial children such restraints, burdens, and limitations as, in its mature judgment, and it deemed wise, right, and proper.
But your fathers, who had not adopted the idea of infallibility of the government and the absolute character of its acts, presumed to differ from the home government in respect to the wisdom and justice of some of those burdens and restraints. They went so far as to pronounce the measures of government unjust, unreasonable, and oppressive, and although such as not to be quietly submitted to. I scarcely need say, fellow citizens, that my opinion of those measures fully accords with that of your fathers. Feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers, like men of honesty and men of spirit, earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. They did so in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. This, however, did not answer the purpose. They saw themselves treated with sovereign indifference, coldness, and scorn, yet they persevered.
Oppression makes a wise man mad. Your fathers became restive under this treatment. They felt themselves the victim of grievous wrongs, wholly incurable in their colonial capacity. With brave men, there is always a remedy for oppression. Just here, the idea of a total separation of the colonies from the crown was born. It was a startling idea, much more so than we, at the distance of time, regarded. The timid and the prudent of that day were, of course, shocked and alarmed by it. Their opposition to the then dangerous thought was earnest and powerful, but amid all their terror and a frightened vociferousness against it, the alarming and revolutionary idea moved on, and the country with it.
On the 2nd of July, 1776, the Old Continental Congress, to the dismay of the lovers of ease and the worshippers of property, clothed that dreadful idea with all the authority of national sanction. They did so in the form of a resolution. We seldom hit upon resolutions drawn up in our day, with whose transparency is at all equalate. Resolved, that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown.
Citizens, your fathers made good that resolution. They succeeded. And today, you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you, therefore, may properly celebrate this anniversary. The 4th of July is the first great fact in your nation's history, the very ring bolt in the chain of your yet undeveloped destiny.
Pride and patriotism, not less than gratitude, prompt you to celebrate and to hold it in perpetual remembrance. I have said that the Declaration of Independence is the ring bolt to the chain of your nation's destiny. So, indeed, I regard it. The principles contained in that instrument are saving principles. Stand by those principles. Be true to them on all occasions, in all places, against all foes, and at whatever cost.
Fellow citizens, I am not wanting in respect for the fathers of this republic. The signers of the Declaration of Independence were brave men. I cannot contemplate their great deeds with less than admiration. They were statesmen, patriots, heroes, and for the good they did and the principles they contended for, I will unite with you to honor their memory.
They loved their country better than their own private interests, and all will concede that it is a rare virtue that ought to command respect. He who will intelligently lay down his life for his country is a man whom it is not in human nature to despise. Your fathers staked their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor on the cause of their country. In their admiration of liberty, they lost sight of all other interests.
They were peacemen, but they preferred revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. They were quiet men, but they did not shrink from agitating against oppression. They showed forbearance, but they knew its limits. They believed in order, but not in the order of tyranny. With them, nothing was settled that was not right. With them, justice, liberty, and humanity were final, not slavery and oppression. You may well cherish the memory of such men. They were great in their day and generation. Their solid manhood stands out the more as we contrast it with these degenerate times.
How circumspect, exact, and proportionate were all their movements. How unlike politicians of an hour. Their statesmanship looked beyond the passing moment and stretched away in strength into the distant future. Mark them, fully appreciating the hardship to be encountered, firmly believing in the right of their cause, wisely measuring the terrible odds against them. Your fathers, the fathers of this republic, laid the cornerstone of the national superstructure, which has risen and still rises in grandeur around you.
Of this fundamental work, this day is the anniversary. Our eyes are met with demonstrations of joyous enthusiasm. The causes which led to the separation of the colonies from the British Crown have never lacked for a tongue. They have all been taught in your common schools, narrated at your firesides, unfolded from your pulpits, and thundered from your legislative halls, and are as familiar to you as household words. They form the staple of your national poetry and eloquence. I leave, therefore, the great deeds of your fathers to others.
My business, if I have any here today, is with the present. The accepted time with God and his cause is the ever-living now. We have to do with the past only as we can make it useful to the present and to the future. Now is the time, the important time. Your fathers have lived, died, and have done their work, and have done much of it well. You live and must die, and you must do your work. You have no right to enjoy a child's share in the labor of your fathers unless your children are to be blessed by your labors. You have no right to wear out and waste the hard-earned fame of your fathers to cover your indolence.
Fellow citizens, pardon me. Allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? And am I, therefore, called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us?
Would to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. Then would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of the disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us.
The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhumane mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today?
Fellow citizens, above your national tumultuous joy, I hear the mournful wail of millions whose chains, heavy and grievous yesterday, are today rendered more intolerable by the jubilee shouts that reach them. To forget them, to pass lightly over their wrongs, and to chime in with the popular theme would be treason, most scandalous and shocking. It would make me a reproach before God and the world.
My subject then, fellow citizens, is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. Standing here, identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine, I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declarations of the past or to the professions of the present, the conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly binds itself to be false to the future.
Standing with God and the crushed and bleeding slaves on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse. I will use the severest language I can command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice and who is not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just.
I fancy I hear some of my audience say, it is just in this circumstance that you and your brother abolitionists fail to make a favorable impression on the public mind. Would you argue more or denounce less? Would you persuade more or rebuke less? Your cause would be much more likely to succeed. But, I submit, where all is plain, there is nothing to be argued. What point in the anti-slavery creed would you have me argue? On what branch of the subject do the people of this country need light?
Must I undertake to prove that the slave is a man? The slaveholders themselves acknowledge it in the enactment of laws for their government. They acknowledge it when they punish disobedience on the part of the slave. There are 72 crimes in the state of Virginia, which, if committed by a black man, subject him to the punishment of death, while only 2 of the same crimes will subject a white man to the like punishment. What is this but the acknowledgement that the slave is a moral, intellectual, and responsible being?
Southern statute books are covered with enactments forbidding, under severe fines and penalties, the teaching of the slave to read or to write. When you can point to any such laws in reference to the beasts of the field, then I may consent to argue the manhood of the slave. When the dogs in your streets, when the fowls of the air, when the cattle on your hills, when the fish of the sea and the reptiles that crawl shall be unable to distinguish the slave from a brute, then I will argue with you that the slave is a man.
Is it not astonishing that while we are plowing, planting, and reaping, using all kinds of mechanical tools, erecting houses, constructing bridges, building ships, working in metals of brass, iron, copper, silver, and gold, that while we're reading, writing, and ciphering, acting as clerks, merchants, and secretaries, having among us lawyers, doctors, ministers, poets, authors, editors, orators, and teachers, that while we are engaged in all manner of enterprises common to other men, digging gold in California, capturing the whale in the Pacific, feeding sheep and cattle on the hillside, moving, living, acting, thinking, planning, living in families as husbands, wives, and children, and above all, confessing and worshiping the Christian's God, and looking hopefully for life and immortality beyond the grave, we are called upon to prove that we are men.
Would you have me argue that man is entitled to liberty? That he is rightful owner of his own body? You have already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to understand? How should I look today in the presence of Americans to show that men have a natural right to freedom? To do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him.
What? Am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to their fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with a lash, to load their limbs with iron, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them into obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No, I will not. I have better employments for my time and strength than such arguments would imply.
What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought.
That which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? I cannot. The time for such argument is past.
At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability, and could I reach the nation's ear, I would, today, pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not a gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled, and the hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all the other days of the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless, your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery, your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are, to him, mere bombast, fraud, deception, and impiety and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages.
There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival.
Take the American slave trade, which we're told by the papers is especially prosperous just now, as the price of men was never higher and carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this Confederacy. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called the internal slave trade, in order to divert from it the horror with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated.
The foreign slave trade has long since been denounced by this government as piracy, as an inscrapable traffic. To arrest it, this nation keeps a squadron at immense cost on the coast of Africa. Everywhere in this country, it is safe to speak of this foreign slave trade as a most inhuman traffic, opposed alike to the laws of God and of man. It is, however, a notable fact that while so much discretion is poured out by the Americans upon those engaged in the foreign slave trade, the men engaged in the slave trade between the states pass without condemnation, and their business is deemed honorable.
Behold the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover? I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways of the nation with droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers, armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market in New Orleans. These wretched people are to be sold singly, or in lots, or to suit purchasers. They are food for the cotton field and the deadly sugar mill.
mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch which drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries on his affrighted captives. There, see the old man with locks thinned and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon that young mother whose shoulders are bare to the scorching sun, her briny tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See, too, that girl of 13, weeping, yes, weeping, as she thinks of the mother from whom she has been torn. The drove moves tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like the discharge of a rifle. The fetters clank and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of the slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe. Her speed had faltered under the weight of her child and her chains. That gash on her shoulder tells her to move on.
Follow this drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where under the sun you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the ruling part of the United States.
I was born amidst such sight and scenes. To me, the American slave trade is a terrible reality. The slave mongers gathered up their victims by dozens and drove them, chained to general depots in Baltimore. With a sufficient number to be collected here, a ship chartered for the purpose of conveying the forlorn crew to Mobile or to New Orleans from the slave prisons to the ships. They're usually driven in the darkness of night, in the deep, still darkness of midnight. I've been often aroused by the dead, heavy footsteps, and the pious cries of the chain gangs that passed our door.
Fellow citizens, this murderous traffic is today an active operation in the boasted republic. In the solitude of my spirit, I see clouds of dust raised on the highways of the South. I see the bleeding footsteps. I hear the doleful wail of fettered humanity on the way to the slave markets, where the victims are to be sold like horses, sheep, and swine, knocked off to the highest bidder. There I see the tenderest ties ruthlessly broken to gratify the lust, caprice, and rhapsody of the buyers and sellers of men. My soul sickens at the sight.
But a still more inhuman, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented. By an act of the American Congress, not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized in the most horrible and revolting form. Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children as slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States.
The power is coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner and American Christianity. Where these go may also go the merciless slave hunter. Where these men are, man is not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. By that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for men.
Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your president, your Secretary of State enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and without a moment's warning hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter to his prey stands superior to the right of marriage, and to all rights in this republic, the rights of God included.
For black men, there is neither law nor justice, humanity nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery and $5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any two villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pious and exemplary black man into the remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for himself. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor.
Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that, in tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe and are bound, in deciding in the case of a man's liberty, to hear only his accusers.
In glaring violation of justice and just shameless disregard of the forms of administrating law, in cunning arrangement to entrap the defenseless, and in diabolical intent, this fugitive slave law stands alone in the annals of tyrannical legislation.
Americans, your Republican politics, not less than your Republican religion, are flagrantly inconsistent. You boast of your love of liberty, your superior civilization, and your pure Christianity, while the whole political power of the nation is solemnly pledged to support and perpetuate the enslavement of 3 million of your countrymen. You hurl your anathemas of the crowned-headed tyrants of Russia and Austria and pride yourselves on your democratic institutions, while you yourselves consent to be the mere tools and bodyguards of the tyrants of Virginia and Carolina.
You invite to your shores fugitives of oppression from abroad, honor them with banquets, greet them with ovations, cheer them, toast them, salute them, protect them, and pour out your money to them like water. But the fugitives from your own hand you advertise, hunt, arrest, shoot, and kill. You glory in your refinement and your universal education, yet you maintain a system as barbarous and dreadful as ever stained the character of a nation, a system begun in avarice, supported in pride, and perpetuated in cruelty.
You shed tears over fallen Hungary and make sad stories of her wrongs, the theme of your poets, statesmen, and orators, till your gallant sons are ready to fly to her arms to vindicate her cause against the oppressor. But in regard to the 10,000 wrongs of American slave, you would enforce the strictest silence and would hail him as an enemy of the nation, he who dares to make those wrongs a subject of public discourse. You are all on fire at the mention of liberty for France and for Ireland, but are as cold as an iceberg at the thought of liberty for the enslaved of America.
You discourse eloquently on the dignity of labor, yet you sustain a system which, in its very essence, casts a stigma upon labor. You can bare your bosom to the storm of British artillery to throw off a 3-penny tax on tea, and yet you wring the last hard-earned farthing from the grasp of the black laborers of your country. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred all men whose skins are not colored like your own.
You declare before the world, and are understood by the world to declare, that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And yet, you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose, a 7th part of the inhabitants of your country.
Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It saps the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing and a byword to a mocking earth.
It is the antagonistic force in your government, the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it, and yet you cling to it as if it were the sheet anchor of all your hopes. Be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in your nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and fling from you the hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 millions crush and destroy it forever.
But it is answered in reply to all this, that precisely what I have now denounced is, in fact, guaranteed and sanctioned by the Constitution of the United States, that the right to hold and to hunt slaves is a part of that Constitution framed by the illustrious fathers of this Republic. Then I dare to affirm, notwithstanding all I have said before, your fathers, instead of being the honest men I have declared them to be, were the veriest impostors that ever practiced on mankind. This is the inevitable conclusion, and from it there is no escape. But I differ from those who charge this baseness on the framers of the Constitution of the United States. It is a slander upon their memory, at least so I believe. And others have, as I think, fully and clearly vindicated the Constitution from any design to support slavery for an hour.
Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. I, therefore, leave off where I began, with hope. While drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions, My spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age. Nations do not now stand in the same relation to each other that they did ages ago. No nation can now shut itself up from the surrounding world and trot round in the same old path of its fathers without interference.
The time was when such could be done. But a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Walled cities and empires have become unfashionable. The arm of commerce has borne away the gates of the strong city. Intelligence is penetrating the darkest corners of the globe. Wind, stream, and lightning are its chartered agents. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one half side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. In the fervent aspirations of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it, Godspeed the year of Jubilee, the wide world o'er. When from the galling chains set free, the oppressed shall vilely bend the knee, and wear the yoke of tyranny like brutes no more. That year will come, and freedom's reign, to man his plundered rights again restored. Godspeed the day. In every clime be understood the claims of human brotherhood, and each return for evil good, not blow for blow. That day will come, all feuds to end, and change the fate of each foe. Godspeed the hour, the glorious hour, when none on earth shall exercise a lordly power, nor tyrant's presence cower. By equal birth, that hour will come to each and all, and from this prison house the thrall go forth. Until that year, day, hour arrive, with head and heart and hand I'll strive to break the rod and rend the jive, the spoiler of his prey deprive. So witness heaven, and now from my chosen post, whate'er the peril or the cost, be driven. Thank you all. So again, we have a few announcements to make. We want to thank you all for coming out on this glorious day, and we encourage you all to take these words home with you and carry them forth into your lives and into your communities. Thank you. Emily? No, wait. Where?
Hi, as David mentioned earlier, my name is Emily, and I'm one of the legal interns at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute. And tomorrow we are launching a 24-hour Independence Day bail bond fundraiser. It's social media driven, so it'll be on the Institute's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the donation link will lead people to the National Bail Fund Network's directory of community bail funds. And from there, people can choose to donate nationally or locally. And the Massachusetts Bail Fund is an option on the website. The kind of like tagline is that Independence Day means so little when bail costs so much. So if you guys would like more information or would like a postcard with the link on it, you can come see me. Even if you can't give anything, this is just as much about education, so we would really appreciate if you could just share the post, tell somebody about it. But again, if you have any more questions, you can just come see me and I have some postcards. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for such a wonderful read, and for the those who organized this and were in charge of it to present such a wonderful event. I just want to say that I am Director of Education of the Museum of African American History, and as a part of what we share here in Boston Common, we want to raise the name of Frederick Douglass and let you know that there is currently an exhibit at the Museum of African American History, 46 Joy Street, picturing Frederick Douglass, the most photograph American of the 19th century, based on a book by Dr. John Stauffer and from Harvard University and Dr. Joey Trod from the University of Nottingham. It is an exhibit well worth seeing, so we invite you to do that. Also, right after we finish here, I will be stationed in front of the Shaw Monument to give a monument talk about that monument, significantly that we are standing here today when Frederick Douglass's two sons, one, Lewis, served in the 54th Regiment, and his other son, Charles, served in the 5th Cavalry, serving the Union Army in the Civil War. So if you would like to join me, I invite you to a talk in front of the monument. Thank you so much.
I just want to say that we still have copies of The Narrative Life of Frederick Douglass. Please take a copy before you leave, for a friend, for a neighbor, for a relative. We have extra copies. Please take them with you.
And I think I'm the last person, so you guys get to go after me. So I'm gonna make this real long. Just kidding. So I'm from Community Change. My name is Myrna Morales, Program Director. I gave Rose a hug because she has been she's been a steward of this reading, and has her with David from the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute has propagated it to a way in which this has actually become an American tradition, where we look back at our hideous history and try to commemorate or try to honor those that have given their lives so that we can be standing here today. I do want to piggyback on the Mass Bail Fund, actually pick this up a little bit further, this initiative, and we just read in paragraph 41, the fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery, and 5 when he fails to do so. And how is that any different than what is going on right now as the judges feed into the prison industrial complex? So if we can, and we should, because I'm not free till everybody else is free. Thank you.
In the beginning, I asked you to imagine what Frederick Douglass's mother and grandmother said to him that set him on a course in the midst of the messages of his inhumanity. Somehow he was set on a path by what seems to be a reasonable assumption, his mother and his grandmother. And maybe there were some others. So I ask you, what are you going to say to the children now? What are you going to say to the children now as we read all of that which we're bombarded with? What are you going to say to the children now? What have you said? What will you say? Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. One more time. I woke up this morning with my mind. I can't hear you. Stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed
this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you, Paula, and thank all of you for attending this 10th annual reading of Frederick Douglass's speech. We look forward to seeing you again next year. Happy 4th.